Now call to order the October meeting of the Oxford Planning Commission. Commissioners, you have the agenda before you. Please note that case number 2804, due to popularity, has been moved up to the head of the public hearings. Ben, do we have any other changes to the agenda?
No changes.
Any other proposed changes from the commission? All right, I'll entertain a motion to approve the agenda.
Move to approve the agenda.
I have a motion. Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? All right. The minutes were posted online. Commissioners, I hope you had a chance to read through the minutes. I did ask for a minor change on the attendance, and that's been updated already. Are there any proposed changes to the minutes? All right, hearing none, I'll entertain a motion to approve the minutes from the September 13th meeting.
Moved.
Second.
All right, we have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? All right. Ben, do we have a staff report today?
Nothing to add, other than what's in the building officials report.
All right, thank you. With that, we'll move on to the consent agenda. We had one case withdrawn from the consent agenda. That is case 2794. Walker & Walker Enterprises filed a request for a special exception for a stormwater ordinance. The rest of the cases remain on the consent agenda. Ben, have we had any communication about removing those?
No, sir.
Are there any cases that the commission would like to remove from the consent agenda? All right. Hearing none, I'll entertain a motion to approve the consent agenda.
Motion to approve.
I have a motion. Is there a second?
Second.
There is a motion and a second to approve the consent agenda. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed?
First, we need a second.
Yes. Yes. All right, that moves us to the public hearings. The first case will be public hearing for case number 2804. Walker & Walker Enterprises, LLC, has filed a request for a site plan approval for Grand Oaks Village for property located at Augusta Drive. Ben?
This property, it measures about 9 acres in the Grand Oaks Planned Unit Development. It's situated between Rosemont Subdivision and the Grand Ridge Subdivision, and it's west of Augusta Drive. The applicant's requesting a site plan approval for a 21-unit common interest development. Each unit will be 3-bedroom, and they will be detached residential houses. This use, the residential CIDs are special uses in the NR district. Additional standards for the use set out the specifics for common areas and building separation standards. The proposal meets the building separation standards, and CID covenants will be required to be provided to staff for review, comment, and approval prior to the issuance of any permits. Parking for detached residential is calculated at 2 spaces per 3-dwelling unit per 3-bedroom dwelling unit, plus 1 space for guest parking for every 3 units. For this development, 49 spaces are required, with up to 61 being allowed. There are 3 additional spaces provided near the mail kiosk, one of which is a handicap accessible space. Additionally, each unit will have a 2-car garage and a driveway, which will account for all needed spaces. Other requirements of review in here related to access. The development will take access off of Augusta Drive, and the access drive will remain private. Complete streets. The provided plan indicates a sidewalk that will connect all houses to Augusta Drive and the sidewalk network that extends into Rosemont Loop. Mitigation, and there has been an updated submittal that I sent to the commission just a little while ago that did provide for tree mitigation calculations, and we did review and approve that. Landscaping, there's a proposed typical landscaping section provided for each of the units, plus this does meet all of the required other landscaping elements. Engineering, at the time that this report was written, was in a final review of the plans, and formal comments, had not been drafted at the time. Though staff did meet with the design engineer to review and discuss issues regarding the stormwater water and sewer elements of the proposal. All sewage for this project will be privately owned and maintained by the Common Interest Development. The water main will be owned and maintained by the City of Oxford. Water service will tie into an existing 8-inch diameter water line located in the right-of-way of Augusta Drive. The city will accept sewage from the development at a manhole existing or new to be determined within the right-of-way of Augusta Drive. Privately owned and maintained lift station and force main will provide collection and conveyance to the city's manhole. The covenants will likely note that the condominium association and the condominium owners, in the event the condominium association dissolves, will each share a percentage of the sewage utilities. The plans provided with this report are not final approved plans. And traffic access and sidewalks. A privately owned and maintained road will connect the development of Augusta Drive. There's no dedicated right-of-way to the city for this private road. The covenants will note that the condominium association and the association owners will each own a percentage should the association dissolve. There are proposed sidewalks along the frontage of the road with the private road. Only the sidewalk on the north side of the private road will extend to Augusta Drive. Sidewalk along the south private road will be limited to frontage with the building pads. Covenants will note that, again, the same note that each property owner will have a shared responsibility should the condominium association dissolve. There are comments in here pertaining to the retaining walls, erosion control, stormwater management, and then an update was provided by the engineer on October the 8th. So the primary design requirement for the city stormwater management ordinance is that the post-development condition peak flows for 2-year, 10-year, 25-year, and 100-year storms must be less than or equal to the peak flow of the pre-development condition. The drainage basin that includes the project site is approximately 15.8 acres that drain to an existing 36-inch diameter pipe located on the Grand Oaks Golf Course. This basin includes approximately 9.7 acres to the north that are not part of the project property but produce runoff that must drain onto or through the property. This area includes a portion of the Rosemont subdivision and the undeveloped area within the TVA right-of-way. The entire basin is being included as part of the stormwater management report to determine pre-development and post-development peak flows. To achieve the post-development peak discharge rates for this project, the stormwater management plan proposes to retain all of the runoff from the 9.7 acres during the 2-year storm in an infiltration detention basin. The detention basin will have a control structure that is designed to not begin discharging until it begins to receive runoff during the 10-year storm. The basin will retain 2-year storm and provide detention during the 10, 25, and 100-year storms. In other words, the pond will hold or retain water from the 2-year storm event for 48 hours and will slow down or detain water from larger events via the control structure. This results in an overall reduction of the post-development discharge rates to less than the pre-development discharge rates. There's additional commentary related to the control structure, a drainage easement to tie to the existing 36-inch diameter pipe, and to surface discharge onto the golf course property will need to be executed and recorded before the issuance of any permits. The covenants will note the condominium association and the owners will each share a percentage of the management facility should the association dissolve. Final stormwater management plan has not been submitted and reviewed at this time. The engineering staff does not foresee any issues with the proposed design that would prevent approval. And then there's the note about the withdrawal of case 2794. Staff recommends approval of the site plan with the following conditions. The approval is for the plan that's submitted. Prior to the issuance of any permits, common interest development covenants shall be submitted for review, comment, and approval by city staff. And all engineering staff comments regarding the site plan must be addressed prior to the issuance of any permits, and approval of the stormwater management plan prior to the issuance of any permits is required. We have received numerous emails that I've passed along to you that will be made a part of the record. They're included in the staff report here, or in the file. So we do have that. I do know the engineer for the applicant, and their attorney are here, as are many residents of Augusta Drive and Rosemont subdivision.
Thank you, Ben. All right, Ladies and gentlemen, I understand that there are quite a few people interested in this case, so let me just make a note about process first. The sequence is going to go like this. I'm going to make a few remarks, hopefully to clarify the issue, and then I'm going to invite discussion from the commission, and then after the commissioners have asked questions, we'll open it up for comments and concerns from the audience. So if you'll bear with me for just a minute, I just want to say a few words about what we're doing here tonight as the Planning Commission, and hopefully shed some light on what you see happening and what we think we're allowed to do and not do, and how we come to those decisions. So the first thing is that this is a site plan approval for a condominium development, and in this zoning district, residential common interest development or condominiums are a special use. Now what that means is in the land development code, there are 4 different categories of permitted uses. A use which would be a single family home or condominiums or an apartment building or a commercial use, for example. A use can be permitted by right, which means as long as you comply with the land development code, you need no permission from the planning department or from the planning commission to put that use on the property. It can be permitted as a special use, which means that there are additional standards for that particular use that are spelled out in the land development code. But if you meet those standards, it requires no further approval from staff or from the planning commission or the board of aldermen. Then there are special exceptions. If it's a special exception, that means that the planning commission has to approve it before that use can be put on the property. And the 4th category is that it's not permitted or only permitted by variance in very rare circumstances, okay? In this case, a common interest development is a special use, which means we are not here to vote on whether this use can be put in this place, because part of the staff report was that this particular development meets the additional standards that are in the code. What we are here to consider is the site plan. So after a development or a use has been approved, if it's of a sufficient size, it comes before the Planning Commission to look at the site plan, and it goes before the Site Plan Review Committee prior to coming here. And they review it for emergency access, utilities, and all of the other components that make a development work. After they've more or less gotten all of those things worked out, it comes to the Planning Commission to make sure everything looks okay. It meets all of the needs of the code, and it serves the public interest. And then we approve it or not. Usually when we don't approve a site plan, it's because there are adjustments to the site plan that need to be made before we do approve it. Okay, it's still, even if we don't approve a site plan, it's not approval or disapproval for the use at that site. All right, commissioners, any questions or comments? All right, I have a question about the stormwater. Could the applicant or the engineer come forward, please?
My name is Shane Cardwell. I'm with Precision Engineering.
Thank you, Shane. The question is just, everything's going to drain to the south end of the property, right? And that butts up against the golf course.
Yes, sir.
And my question is just what the drainage is off of the parcel in question and where it goes from there on the golf course.
There's a 36-inch storm drain pipe that we don't know exactly the specific route, but we know where the entrance is, where we would connect our storm drainage network to, and then where the discharge end is over toward the MDOT right-of-way. We're actually in the process of scheduling some video inspection of this trunk line to figure out exactly where it goes and what the depth is, what the condition of it is. But currently we know it's about 450 feet of pipe, but we don't know the exact location.
Okay, so you're going to tie into piping.
We're going to tie into an actual pipe, yes. Okay. That's correct.
And my understanding from the city is that it would, bearing in mind that you haven't assessed that pipe, but by design, it'll carry all but the 100-year flow?
Yes.
Okay. Other questions? All right.
So being this is a special use, and that means, and they've met all the conditions for a special use for this project?
Yes. Yeah, Ben, please confirm.
Is a traffic survey part of this?
For the special use?
Yes.
No. So as you can see that there's a condition of approval related to the covenants. That would be the element that we need to have those finalized before the special use is officially approved. But that's a contingent of approval, so no permits can be pulled until we have that. And once we have those, then that will be approved. So it's approvable, contingent upon our confirmation that it covers all of those requirements, those conditions that were in the engineer's report, that everybody has a fractional ownership of all the common facilities that are within the development and the utility facilities that are in there.
But Rihanna, since traffic seems to be the primary concern for the residents on Augusta, would you talk us through how traffic is assessed and what triggers a traffic study?
Sure, I'd be glad to. So our land development code lists a series of thresholds for various types of development. And when a development gets, when it meets that threshold, exceeds it, or if there are extenuating circumstances that the engineering department feels a traffic study is required, then we will require that study. For condominiums, the threshold is it has to generate 100 peak hour trips, and that's estimated at 200 units. So by our land development code, if they were building 200 condo units, they would have to have a traffic study. This one with 20 units, let me look, I've got the numbers. You're looking at, in the PM, 10 trips per hour generated in the peak hour, and that's in the PM peak, and the AM peak is estimated at 7 trips. So there's not enough traffic that will be generated from this site to warrant a traffic impact study. I know that traffic calming on Augusta has been a conversation for a number of years. With the development of Rosemont, we have received more calls and concerns about traffic calming on that street. But that is an enforcement issue, and that's not addressed in our land development code. That's not an issue related to this development. It's an existing issue, and that's related to just people either speeding up the hill, and we've enacted some traffic calming measures, or if people are illegally parking on Augusta, that's also an enforcement issue.
All right, so just to summarize, you don't have any concerns about the current traffic, at least the number of trips, and the size of the condominium wouldn't trigger a traffic impact study, right?
Correct. There are no engineering concerns related to this development and the number of units. There's not a concern that we are suddenly going to have a need for signalization or some negative impact engineering-wise related to this development.
Thank you. Did you want to?
I don't really have anything specific to add to the traffic comments Rihanna made. I think she was pretty clear about that. I mean, a project this size, as she says, based on the kind of industry standard projection of traffic flow that you have for this type project, it would be somewhere in the range of 10 trips an hour in the afternoon, kind of the peak time in the afternoon, which is normally 5 to 6 or so, and even fewer than that in the peak time in the morning. But I would like to just maybe a slight back up, but I know you're going to open it for questions from Plan Commission and the audience. But this is as has been said here a couple of times, a 21 unit common interest development, which is condominium development. The condominium development nomenclature, I want to just make sure we're clear on what we're really they're going to build out there. These are going to be single family homes. It's going to look like any other subdivision, have a yard. They've all got 2-car garages that are side loaded, so you don't even see them from the street. high-quality homes. The Walkers have done a lot of work here in Oxford area and Lafayette County, and I think anyone that's looked at what they built will see that it's always high quality, and they're very careful about trying to be good neighbors. This property is, the underlying zoning is neighborhood residential, NR, which allows 9 units per acre. We've got about 6 units here. About 6 acres on this property. I think there was a typo or something about the 9 acres, but it's about 6 acres. And so by code, they could do 54 units. They're proposing 21. I've even got a history, and I don't know if I want to bog us down with this too much, but I've got some of the original master plan maps for the PUD, the plan unit development for all of Grand Oaks. This is a map that's over 15 years old and showed 96 units between this parcel that we're here discussing tonight and the kind of sister project that was approved and built across the street, Augusta Place, was built 10 or 12 years ago, I guess. We actually have plans here that we had fully developed for developing about 52 units on this parcel that we're talking about now. Again, sort of a sister project to Augusta Place, but that was right around 2007, 2008, and they never built it, but it was ready to go. Just the finances were not there. So again, by code, they're allowed 54 units. And all of the master plans dating back more than 15 years are showing 2 to 3 times the number of units they're proposing for this development. So I just want to make sure that was clear. I mean, these developers, they could try to squeeze more units on here, and they've got the right to do it. By right, they could build, again, up to about 54 units, but they're not doing it. And again, these homes are going to be single-family homes. They're going to be the same quality and probably similar or possibly exceed the per square foot cost of the Rosemont homes, and probably will exceed the per square foot value of the homes along Augusta. So, I mean, if anything, we feel like this is very compatible with the existing neighborhood, definitely not detrimental to home values. In fact, very well could increase existing home values in the area. But that was just a few comments I wanted to make before you open it up for other questions.
When originally designed the whole plan, was there another access to this besides the Augusta Drive plan, or was this the only?
Well, I would like to share this if I could.
There we go.
Backwards. Left is right, up is down. So yeah, you see these pieces here and here. Those are the projects I was referring to. The project on the west side, I'm sorry, the east side of Augusta, that's basically here, that was constructed quadplex condominium units. This side that we're talking about today was also originally intended to be the same type units, quadplex condominium units. And there's a little note here that you'll never be able to read on this overhead, but right here it says 96 condominium units was proposed. And this is a set of plans that our firm actually did. This was back in 2006, it was right at the end of 2006 these plans were developed. Again, sister project to what's across the street, these broad proposals, quadplex condominium units. And there were, I believe this is indicating 52 of those units. So, so again, and to answer your question, Mr. Sprague, this is essentially the same access point that we're talking about today. The exact same access point.
And I know there's just one in and out. There's not any way to have a separate construction entrance, I assume, during construction either.
There's not a convenient way to do it. And the same, before Rosemont was approved, there were 107 homes on Augusta Drive. And every home in Rosemont was built by hauling lumber, shingles, and every other bit of construction equipment and materials up the same stretch of road. I mean, homes in Rosemont would not be there if they hadn't accessed Augusta Drive the same way the Walkers are proposing to do here.
Is there an inconvenient way to make a construction entrance?
And they don't own any property that fronts on another street. So Highway 7's on the backside, but that's no access right over there. Really no way to get permission from that side.
Paul, currently Augusta is one way in, one way out, but part of the master plan is for that to link up eventually, is that right?
Well, that's right. In fact, this same map that I'm there yet, we'll get back up here. So, of course, this is Augusta Drive as it exists now, up into the Rosemont area north here. This is also Augusta Drive that comes up, moves back around and has been constructed to basically right there. But yes, as this drawing indicates, we actually worked with Bernard Johnson, who owns some property over there on that end of Augusta Drive. He recently got a plat approved, sitting basically right here. And even part of that plat, the city made us show what is, has been shown for more than 15 years, which is the interconnectivity from Augusta Drive on the west side over to Augusta Drive that's already been built just about to the power line. In fact, this is the plat that we got approved. Johnson, that's at the end of Augusta Drive on the eastern side, and the city wanted to specifically have it on record that eventually this was going to be a roadway that connects from existing in Augusta on the east over to this, essentially the same location right across from where the entrance to the development we're here tonight discussing will be. But this connection will eventually happen. Our client does not control this property, but I mean, it's part of the master plan and it's intended to be built.
So there's about, what, 1,000 feet that isn't currently planned to be built, but is in the plan?
That's probably a reasonable estimate, maybe around 1,000 feet.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions from the commission? All right. Ladies and gentlemen, first, I guess just to prove to you that I read all your emails, I'll summarize the issues that I got. Most of them were related to traffic in some form or other, but that included several different concepts related to traffic. One is the width of the street, the prevalence of on-street parking, relatedly emergency access, the number of new trips that would be generated by the condominium development, lack of sidewalks along Augusta, children in the street playing, and lack of backyards contributing to that, and then speed up and down Augusta. So I don't want to take away from any of your comments, but just to know that we did read the 13 or so messages that we got from the community, and they've been put in the record. And if anybody from the audience would like to speak on this matter, please come forward, state your name and your address.
Good afternoon. My name is David Ducray, and I'm got an address of 144 Rosemont. I've owned property in Oxford for 19 years, and I've been a permanent resident here for 6. I'm a retired police captain from Memphis. I had 39 years with the Shelby County Sheriff's Department. I've had extensive training in traffic, accident, investigation, traffic enforcement, complaints. I've been to schools up in Chicago, Florida, and you name it. I'm a graduate of the FBI Academy. I taught for the Department of Justice, and I ended my career as a special operations commander of almost 100 detectives. You've heard the traffic engineers or some of the studies and things like that. My experience was the real world, on the scene, daily, all day, for many, many years. We went through a lot of this when we had the southeast part of Shelby County with Hickory Hill area. I've seen the exact type of high density, high profit condominiums, zero lot homes, whatever you want to talk about it. They've had the same type of traffic problems. Most of them are built the setbacks are very short. There's not enough room to the street, so people park on it. I wanted to qualify at least that I had experience in the real world. I know they have real nice formulas that they go by as far as what kicks in. I don't agree with it. I think it's the real world, exactly what's going on. All these people know what's going on. Just to lay it out, there's about 170 total homes that are currently out there, from the beginning of Augusta all the way through Rosemont, give or take one or two. That translates to over 500 household members, approximately 340 cars at 2 per household, and if you can see all the trucks that are parked up and down Augusta, there may be more than that. We're lucky in Rosemont that we have further setbacks. We have wider pad driveways, and we really don't have that much of a problem. Augusta is actually 1 foot narrower than what Rosemont is. And this is your main access for 170 homes. You add that up with the new one, now you're up to approximately 191. Over 500, close to 600 household members, and 380-something cars. Obviously, everybody knows that there's one way in, one way out. There are no sidewalks because of the short setbacks. Most of the residents park on the street due to small garages, short driveways, the kids play in the street. I sent an email. I don't know whether that you saw the pictures. There were pictures of traffic cones that the parents have set out in the middle of the street. I think the greatest risk is not going to be from the residents, but it's going to be from service people, delivery people. Time is money, and they will fly once they get through some of the congestion. Football games, sporting weekends, it is tremendous. You have grass cutting people that park any parked car on that street. There's no two-way traffic. You have to wait. It's like a flagman on the highway when they're doing maintenance work. You have to wait maybe 2 or 3 cars stacked up here, 2 or 3 cars stacked up here, and everybody gives hand signals as to who's going to come first. The congestion has also caused the city to zone no parking spots all along Augusta. The city knows that there is a problem, or they would not have spent the money, the time, and the paint to paint these no parking spots. These were intended to keep 2 cars from parking adjacent to where you would only have one-way traffic at the most. And by the time you take some of the bigger vehicles that everybody's got now, it's extremely narrow. It's almost too narrow to get emergency vehicles in and out. I've had plenty of experiences over my 39 years with emergency vehicles, watching them come and go. I was not a firefighter. We made the scene with firefighters quite often in my younger days. There's also a radar sign which will flash what the speed is, and it's controlled with a optic solar panel. This was put in by the city. They knew that this was a problem. Recent fire on Augusta with the first 2 condominiums, it just shut everything down. It didn't shut just the first house or 2 down, it shut 170 something houses down. The additional planned subdivision would stress an already bad situation that's already there. The entrance to this new planned subdivision, if you look at the photographs that I sent, you will see the Augusta sign, and you will also see that it is on a ridge the crest of a ridge, it's also in a curve. Now, the ones that are coming from Rosemont, the ones that are coming from Rosemont, many times have almost hit deer because you just can't, the crest happens so quickly. This is your entrance of your new project. Augusta Drive had 2 sections and a large horseshoe. And if you look at where Augusta comes into Rosemont on the crest of the hill, you will see, not only will you see the sign that says Augusta this way, you will also see that curves and the street widens and the road was going to the right. This was planned all along. However, when evidently the last condominiums that went in there, it was never connected. Why it was not connected, it would have given access for Augusta on the east side and the Augusta that we're talking about now, access to get out of there. I cannot understand why that the developers were not held to the fire to continue and to link the 2 of them together on some of their projects. This was never done. It's too late once these houses are in there. You can't go back and fix something. Poor planning from the very beginning should not set a precedence for poor planning in the future. It's only making it worse. But my biggest concern is the safety and the congestion on there, getting first responders in. And after talking to some of the boots on the ground with the fire department, not just because of this, well before this ever even occurred. It was a joke. They asked where I lived or whatever. It was a joke for them. They have a lot of concern places. Some are 4th, 5th Street in Oxford. This is one of their concerns, that they will not be able to get it in. Now, you'll never hear the fire chief say anything, but the boots on the ground that drive these trucks and go to and the emergency vehicles, they will tell you, they have been up and down through there.
Yes, sir. Could we have quite a few people, and we want to give other people a chance to speak.
Okay, let me finish here, please. This is waiting for a tragedy. I've worked 2 fatalities on children. Same situation. They step out behind the car and they've been hit. I've worked a bunch of them where children were injured. And all you have to do is to see a child laying in the street. It affected me my whole life. And the next thing that you're gonna see are mom and dad show up in the scene. That will affect it. And this is what's gonna happen. Let's do the right thing. Let's not make this just an automatic thing just because this guy several years ago either bought land from somebody and the next thing that you know, well, I've got to do something with it. Until things are changed, access is primarily number one. The number of cars that are on the street that are causing a lot of this. Now, obviously the setup, the way that it was done in the very beginning, it makes it difficult. They're almost forced to park. They have friends, they come over. There's absolutely no, you can get one car in the drive and that's it. I thank you for my time.
Thank you, sir. Thank you for your service and for your comments. Do any of the commissioners have a question?
He may have said it right there at the end, but that's what I was going to ask was, is there an answer about the enforcement of this? Apparently this has been painted yellow. They're supposed to be enforcing this. Has there been, I would think by the reaction of everybody here, there'd be numerous complaints on file with the city about this issue. Has that been the case and they just don't have anywhere to park? Are they ignoring it? What's going on with that? That's my primary question. Because that seems like that would ease this congestion issue. It's not a development issue, it's an enforcement. Am I missing something?
I'd like
Yes, sure. Yes, sir. Please come forward and state your name.
My name's Jason Bruner. I live at 1031 Augusta. I have 5 children. One of them was hit by a car. I've seen a dog hit by a car. I've called the police. They painted curbs 2 years ago, maybe. It's all faded. The sign that he mentioned is not working. I requested speed bumps. I mean, the girl that was hit my son, which it was just a barely contact, she was on her phone. And my wife did justice for that, I can assure you. But nothing's being maintained. I've asked for a patrol. The driveways, you can only fit 1.5 cars. The garage, I can't fit 2 cars in my garage. And I can't say I can't have company over. I'm lucky I don't have a painted curb. I don't know what I'd do if I did. I'd have to park in the yard and pay fines. So that's one of my things as far as traffic. I mean, the last fire, you couldn't get out of the neighborhood. That was for sure. I'm just trying to wrap my head around if what I've read on code is 81. Is that right? Houses for a one-way in, one-way out?
Yeah, if that is the extent of the development. I mean,
Okay.
what we're dealing with here is a planned unit development, so it develops in
Right.
phases. And I think Ben or Paul could speak more on how that's been treated in the past. But
And I just, I mean, you could go around and measure all the driveways. I mean, unless you were to buy, everybody was to buy small cars, I mean, I don't think you're gonna get away from getting cars off the streets. I just don't see it happening. I think the city's failed in maintaining it. I mean, like I said, the sign doesn't work. I asked for speed bumps. I mean, if you're looking at your phone, when you hit a speed bump, you're gonna slow down. If I suggested anything, put speed bumps on the road. I mean, people will not slow down. I've thrown baseballs at cars. I mean, I got 5 kids. I'm not gonna tell them they can't ride their bikes, and they're aware, but you know, it's the type, I mean, I own a heat and air company here. I do work in Rosemont. There's some mom and dads, they bought a house for all the college kids back there. You think they care? They don't. I mean, that's part of my problem.
I sympathize. I mean, I have young
Yeah.
kids, and we have people zooming through our neighborhoods on phones all
Well-
the time as well.
And people, I mean, if you go up the street, you know, everybody knows kind of the deal. You get a whole bunch of new people in there. I mean, people like walking their dogs. I mean, there's tons of folks that walk their dogs. There's a pond down there people walk to. I mean, it can be a good place for kids and that sort of nature, but I think adding more to it is only gonna hurt it.
Yes, sir.
One question off the topic while I'm here.
Sure.
And I know a guy on the street, he's a lawyer, he couldn't be here and told me to mention this. He said it appears that they're planning to destroy a wetland, there's ponds in this area, and it would ask if there was an environmental impact study done.
Paul, could you speak on that?
Yeah, I can try to address that.
That's really all I got, so.
Thank you, sir. I appreciate it.
Right, there are no wetlands on the property. There is an old breached, an old pond that was on the site that the levee has been breached. But yeah, there aren't wetlands on the site. And no, we have not done a phase 1 environmental assessment, but those don't actually look for wetlands. That's more of an environmental, that's searching for potential environmental hazards like buried tanks and those kinds of things is a phase 1 environmental assessment, so.
Thanks, Paul. I mean, I'm certainly sympathetic to kids playing in the neighborhood, to people driving while on their telephones, to the congestion caused by parking on street. The difficulty for the commission is that those are issues on Augusta that don't affect the site plan for the condominiums. Right. Now, that's not a very satisfying answer, but that's what we're here to approve or not, is how the condominiums are laid out on their site plan. Now, I'm happy to refer staff and engineering to try to do more to help with enforcement on Augusta to try to alleviate things, but I think for most people here, what we're hearing is that's a double-edged sword, right? If they enforce on-street parking, you lose parking. And I'm afraid I can't do anything about that, and I'm sorry.
I've got a question on this that I want to ask, and it may go to engineering, but you know, this is our third meeting for us new folks, but you know, there is a section in the code regarding ingress and egress to the property, 9.2.10.2, that does say, you know, one of the considerations is ingress and egress, taking into, you know, consideration vehicular, bicycle, pedestrian safety, traffic flow, and that routing of vehicle traffic to and through minor residential streets is discouraged. And maybe this for the engineer is this a minor road or a major thoroughfare? Because that seems to be a little different than just does this meet the requirements of the as far as the development itself. And so I'd like to know a little bit more about that before we make a decision.
Rihanna, could you speak to that?
So, sure, I'd be glad to. So this is, and I'm looking at our street types now, it would be considered a local road. It's not a minor side street. It is the primary access point for all of these houses in here. So if you think about this neighborhood, you've got Augusta Place would be more of what you would call a minor road. This is not a major road. It's very wide. It was built with our older code section, so it's a very wide street, and that's why you have the areas with where people can park. Because it is so wide. The narrower streets don't allow on-street parking. There's not room for it, and so it's not a collector. It's not a major street, but it's just a local road. It's intended to carry people this volume of traffic back and forth through the neighborhood to get to their homes.
And just to put some numbers to that, Augusta is how wide? 27 feet?
26.
Sorry, somebody answering there?
Well, we got one answer from the audience. It was 26 feet, so maybe just confirmation.
Well, so the construction plans have it as 28 feet. That'd be back of curb to back of curb, and I believe that was the older code. Section, so you've probably got 24 feet of pavement and then 2 feet of curb and gutter. So you have 1.5 feet of gutter pan on each side, and then the curb.
And what is the newer code for streets and neighborhoods like this?
So what we're seeing with our newer code is we're seeing roads that are 20 feet, that are 24 feet back of curb in places, sometimes 22, 23, they're much narrower, and that's still wider than what you've got in our old downtown areas where you might have 18 feet of pavement and just 20 feet back of curb. So 14th Street is 20 feet.
Thank you.
That's just an example that most people drive on, is where a narrower street is.
Yeah, I mean, I think wide or narrow really depends on the dynamics of the particular neighborhood, but at least in absolute terms, this is a moderate to wide street that has too much parking on it, sounds like.
I have a question for maybe staff, I'm not sure. Well, I guess staff. As far as connecting the two Augustas, I know that's different property owners all along the way, different developers, but we just wait until whoever owns that last piece of property decides they want to build on it, and then we make them connect, or how does that work?
There was not a timeline associated with the original approval, so we've seen incremental growth of the road network, and then recently within, I guess, the last 2 years, prior to the pandemic, the gardens at Grand Oaks was approved that showed that road being extended from, I guess I guess it would be the east side of the Augusta Drive to within about 1,000 feet of this particular intersection. So, yes, it's an incremental process that.
So if that person who owns that property with 1,000 feet never develops it, it may never be connected.
I suppose that there's a potential for that.
But if they did want to develop it, we would require that they connect, that they finish it, or as much as they actually own of it.
Right.
Would anyone else in the audience like to speak? Yes, sir. And please, we've heard about traffic quite a bit. I'd ask that you orient your comments to other issues if possible.
I'm Todd Vaughn. I live at 100 Rosemont, and that's the first house behind the Rosemont sign. And so I'll be right dead in front of where the new plan's going to be. I wanted to clarify a couple of things when it comes to the road, the narrowness of Augusta. There's two things that need to be said here. There's no enforcement of the parking on the yellow, never has been. And the other thing is there's inserts within the yellow between the houses. So what that means is there's not a curb. You follow me? And so the people just go ahead and park in there anyway. So you could have one person parked in a non-yellow insert and a non-yellow curb on the other side. So they're both within whatever guidelines we have, right? So that enforcement and the fact that not all the curbs are painted is a huge problem. So that enforcement of that needs to happen. Otherwise, you're just going to have two cars parked on either side of the street. And I know that this issue is not directly related to the development. I mean, and I'm not here to say that's a good development or not. I mean, that's up to y'all. But even if Augusta gets connected to the other side, people are not going to go that way. That's not the major in and out. The major in and out is going to be down Augusta. So keep that in mind, that just because Augusta gets connected doesn't mean traffic's going to go that way.
Yes,
so it is what it is, I guess.
Thank you, sir. Any
Thanks.
questions?
I have a question for Ben. So,
One second. Ben.
we have a lot of residents here, and it seems like that their issues are more enforcement, traffic, things like that. If it's not us that are deciding those type of issues, what is the avenue for the residents to go to? And if this is approved tonight, can that be a condition so that these residents can be heard before any permits or any progress is made?
That's a good question. I suspect the alderman is going to come up and he's going to speak to some of those issues of how to be eliminated. But I mean, he and I will likely be getting together to discuss an enforcement, plan to, get with the police department to, I don't necessarily know that it would be prudent to go out there and immediately tow, but I mean, I would imagine that it would be a warning system to make people aware and to start, respecting that, because I drove out there at 1:30 this afternoon. There's people parking yellow curb on both sides of the street, and so beyond, people parking in designated parking places. I mean, there are people that are clearly violating the parking requirements that are there. And so in those instances, I think the police department would, warn and then, move towards ticketing and potentially towing. So, but I would suspect that the alderman would like to speak to some of those issues.
Yes, sir. Please come forward.
So just for the record, Mark Hillsley, Alderman, Ward 2. So we painted those yellow lines almost 4 years ago. It was one of the first things I did in my new term. We had the meetings, came up with the idea of going every other side so that you didn't have it all on one side. We looked at the curves and said, where does it make sense on an inside curve to make it no parking? The comment about the curb cuts, when they developed that subdivision, they pre-laid out all the curb cuts. And so you do have sections without curbs. And so we painted yellow on both sides. When they painted, they did not paint that little curb cut. That's an easy fix. We've asked for a few months for those curbs to be updated, painted. We can do that. That's an easy fix. Enforcement. You're all asking for enforcement. All I have to do is call the chief and say, we've updated it, we want it enforced. And that's gonna make a lot of people unhappy. But that's the enforcement. So I guess my question for the people on Augusta Drive, do you want it enforced? That's yours, that's your family, that's your friends, that's your visitors, that's your service people. That's one of my biggest concerns is your landscape people. They're gonna have to figure out where to park their vehicles, drop their mowers and go park their vehicle somewhere else and walk up. Because once we start, if we ask for enforcement, there's no gray line between that. It's either a yes or a no, and we'll be glad to do it. But I just want to make sure that that's what I'm hearing. I think that's what we need. That's why we did the yellow lines. And I think that's what we need to help that. On the other hand, on traffic calming, all of our traffic calming studies show as you move vehicles off the street, your speeds pick up. So if you have vehicles on both sides of the street, even though it's congested, your traffic speeds are slower. As you move those cars off of the street, your speeds pick up. We can ask for enforcement. Most of the people, what we've seen in traffic studies, the violators are the residents in the area. Yeah, there's some visitors coming through and there's some construction workers coming through. We've been very successful in Old Oxford of running some patrols on Pierce, Johnson, Beanland, and where we thought we were getting a lot of fast speeds, OPD's report back to us is showing that even though it seems like they're going faster, 30, 35 is what they're getting. In a 25-mile-an-hour speed limit, they're getting max at about 30. One thing we have seen is Johnson is one of the examples. Johnson has a heavy traffic load on it from a count. You don't have a lot of speeders, but you have a lot of counts. So that's some of the things we can do on Augusta is we can send a patrol officer out there, not to write tickets, but to run radar and get us a true traffic count to say, okay, this is the time of day we're seeing this, and the feedback from the neighbors to say our worst traffic time is 7 to 8, 8 to 9. I walk in the mornings. I know 7:30 to 8:30 is the worst traffic time on Majestic Coast because everybody's running late to school. And so that's when you see your traffic. So give me some feedback on your enforcement, but we can start enforcing immediately. But just realize that that's the neighbors. Remember Rosemont, y'all have to drive down that street. The condos have to drive down the street. If that's what I'm hearing, we can institute enforcement. I mean, that's a fix we can put into place pretty quick.
Thank you, sir.
Yep. Any other questions?
What about speed bumps or humps here in Oxford?
And Rihanna, do you want to answer that?
We can look at the petition. I need to evaluate the grade of Augusta. We do have limitations when there's a steep grade on what speed humps can be in there. But provided that the physical constraints are met, then we can, we'll need someone to be the supporter of the petition that will carry the petition around. Our traffic calming policy is that someone in the neighborhood takes the petition around and has to get signatures. We would require signatures for Augusta, Rosemont, and Augusta Place because all of those residents would have to use that. And then we would have a layout for where the speed humps would be. It's going to be difficult to find a place on Augusta to install them because of how close the driveways are. I'm not sure. The speed humps are 22 feet wide. So just looking, it's trying to get it may be a challenge to find a place. We can work on a layout. I'm not sure where we can, there's going to be a limited number of locations that they would be able to be installed that are not blocking someone's driveway. So we can certainly look at it. I'm going to be a challenge. And then it comes to, the residents signing off and the location being approvable.
And to be.
But we can work on a plan and submit that to Alderman Hilsey.
And that takes 100% of the residents affected to sign that petition, to agree to the speed bumps. And just remember, wherever a speed bump goes in, there's a sign in the yard where the speed bump is saying there's a speed bump. And there's a sign, what is it, Rihanna, 20, 25 feet prior to that? There's a speed bump?
On both approaches, yes. So there will be signs at the speed humps and on both approaches from both directions. And I would assume that there would be multiple speed humps given the length of this. So there are going to be multiple signs. We would probably have the yellow lights on top, which, and they would be the yellow signs, which people, I say that with reluctance because I know that people do not like our yellow signs, but that's what we're required to have anytime we put the speed humps up, because as our, and Mr. McCray mentioned, you may be on your phone and not notice, but when you hit that bump, you're aware, and we're trying to give you enough advance warning so that you see it, because we don't want you to be surprised when you hit that bump. We don't want any coffee spilled or, any injuries or any of those things. So we're going to give you plenty of advance warning, and it is bright so that it can be seen.
I just we belabored the speed and the traffic, et cetera, and this is about the site plan. So we will, between Ben and Rihanna and myself, we will address the Augusta Drive parking and speed issues and come up with a resolution.
Thank you. Yes, ma'am.
I have a question.
Please come forward. Please state your name for the record, please.
My name is Susan Fino. I live at 1030 Augusta. And I have a question that I believe is a site plan question. What is the woodland situation there? Will trees remain, especially in the section before the condos are built through the drive?
Mm-hmm.
What are there trees, grass? Will it remain a woodland? That's my question.
Yes, ma'am. I think, Paul, do you have a figure to show on that? Or?
Technical drawing, but just for your
So it's this
information.
area here.
This area
yeah.
here, which is honestly right now being used by these people as their backyard, even though it's not their property. But the intent is to leave essentially all of that undisturbed, but just enough to get this roadway constructed into the site. Quite a few trees will be cleared in the area where they're going to build the homes, but we're trying to leave a pretty significant existing natural buffer between the back of the homes on Augusta and the drive as it goes into the site.
And are any trees, I know sometimes when trees are taken out other trees have to be put in. Is this that sort of site?
There are code requirements for planting trees along the roadway, replanting new trees, so you can see here, this is actually a tree planting plan that we have. So replanting trees along the street, and then along this rear buffer adjacent to the golf course, and then kind of a scattering of additional trees in this area that we're trying not to disturb.
So you're trying not to disturb these trees here?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Is there a copy of that? Can I have a copy?
You can,
Take it to the.
it's also on the website.
Okay, if it's on the website, I can get it there. All right, thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Does anyone else want to speak on something, on a topic we haven't heard? Yes, sir.
My name is Woody Sample, and I live at 118 Rosemont Drive Loop. I had a question about the, I noticed in reading the synopsis that was given to us that the sewer would be maintained by the individual property owners. Normally, the concept is you put a collector line in, you feed the collector line takes it to a pump, you pump it up. Is there a difference in what you're doing here, or is it?
No, that is what we're doing. It's just because it's a condominium development, the sewer infrastructure will be privately owned. Essentially, the responsibility of the condominium association, which is quite common for condominiums. But yeah, it is all collected with a sewer main that runs down the proposed street. It goes to a pump station that's on the west end of the street, and then it's pumped back up into an existing manhole in Augusta, and then it flows south down Augusta to where the golf course are on, down to the sewer treatment plant.
Collector lines won't be owned by the city, won't be dedicated to the city. It'll be maintained by the individual property owner?
By the condominium association.
Okay.
Which again is quite common for condominium developers.
Don't question, y'all build a great house. I mean, y'all.
Well, these guys build houses.
Yeah, but that was a concern of mine. And, you know, when you turn this over to condo associations, like, and these are not going to be single family, they're going to be condos basically. And I'm sure 25 years ago, there was a conversation about this street, Augusta. Help me from my old city planning days. There were thoroughfares, there were collectors, and there were locals. Started out as a local street. The city of Oxford is making it a collector, almost a thoroughfare, with all these developments that's coming in, Rosemont included. When the street was planned, it would go down and dead end, which is a local street. Well, now you've got Rosemont, you've got Augusta Place, you've got everything on Augusta Drive, and now what happens when they go across the power line on the other side of Rosemont? This street just can't carry all that traffic. I'm sorry to harbor on that, and I hate for the walkers because, you know, it's not a very good piece of property. And I would encourage you to do this. Before you vote, go out there and look at it. I think when you see it on the ground, it looks good and all these color paintings and stuff, but it's going to be a really congested area. Until you look at it firsthand, I don't think you can get a grasp of the situation these people are talking about. Thank y'all.
Thank you, sir. Yes, ma'am.
Hi, I'm Kimberly Stewart. I live at 1034 Augusta. And I think the main thing, I know we've talked traffic to death, but I think he just summarized it when he said, come look at it. So a few things I've heard mentioned is we will get a police car to go and check the speeds. If anyone sees a police car, what do? They slow down. Common sense, that's not going to tell you what takes place every day. I am pro-Oxford development, but I'm also for protecting what we have. Those of us who bought homes on the street did not buy them with the intention of having additional properties built when the street couldn't support it. So we thought that was already been seen, that it was not possible to support another potential 60 cars living on the same street. I'll finalize it by saying if it was a very simple solution of let's paint yellow, let's do speed bumps, let's put lights, this would have already been resolved. Because I personally called to see about getting the speed signs and all installed 4 or 5 years ago. So this would have been resolved. So if you've got infrastructure that is struggling to support the existing development, why would you add more cars to a road that endangers the safety of the residents, the safety of the workers, and the safety of the children? I don't have children living there, but I see them and I warn them daily. So please keep in mind the safety of your existing residents before putting development and profits ahead of that. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. And I can't speak for the other commissioners, but I visited the site twice prior to the hearing, so.
Okay, so kindly visit it on game weekends when people have guests.
We can't base everything on game weekends. Come to my house on a game weekend.
That's okay.
We can't do that.
But just remember, I think that those of us who live on the street, there should not be something enacted that says you can no longer have visitors on your street, right? Because it supports what we have. But then once you have completed Rosemont and now completed 1100 Augusta, struggling a little bit, why would you add an additional 3 cars per resident, 60 plus cars to an area that you can't widen the streets, you can't add sidewalks, and God forbid if someone down in Rosemont or 1100 Augusta needs a fire truck, that they can't get through. So please don't allow the endangerment of those whom are already there for the profits of a new development, because it will not serve all of us well.
Thank you,
Thank
ma'am.
you.
Is there anyone else who would like to speak? I have to be a little bit firmer now on something other than traffic. You promise?
Oh, absolutely. You're gonna love this.
Please come forward, sir.
I would like to point out that I think a lot of this is for the aldermen. Your concerns are for the aldermen. We are only empowered to vote on this site plan. That's all we can do. And maybe it's for OPD and the aldermen, but that's all we can do.
Okay, I'm David Ducray, I already stated earlier. This is a question to all of the members. Are there any of you that have a relationship with the builder, financial interest, that would cause a conflict of interest? On Grand Oaks Village, you need to please recuse yourself from the voting. This includes lawyers, realtors, investors, contractors, or anybody that would have a financial interest. I hope that you would do the right thing and not do it. So is everybody good on that?
Yes, and I would like to state that it's very common for us to recuse ourselves from cases when we know we have a conflict of interest.
Well, I would think so. That would be the right thing to do.
We do.
Mr. Alexander, do you have something?
Oh, yeah, I would be happy to speak to that. I'm a realtor. I've been in Oxford for 40 years. I've been a realtor for 23 years. I am the responsible broker for Cannon Cleary McGraw. My duty as the responsible broker is to make sure that different realtors within our office do the right thing ethically and morally and take care of our clients and customers. That's being fair, that's being honest. As a responsible broker in my particular firm, I have probably met Mr. Walker twice, maybe 3 times in the 23 years I've been here. My responsibility as the responsible broker, in my particular instance, this is not in every office, but this is in my office particular, because when I left the firm that I was with after 12 or 14 years. I had the opportunity to go to another firm, which was Cannon, Cleary, McGraw. The reason I went is because I think they do things differently. I think they're very aggressive. I think they do a wonderful job, and it's my responsibility to make sure that they do that. In doing that, however, and in the structure that I was agreed to go to, because in the past, I've had other businesses here in town, and I've had partners. Some were good, some were not. I am not a partner in Cannon, Cleary, McGraw. I make no money on any overrides of any commissions in that office other than mine, my own personal listings or sales that I have. So I make no money if Cannon, Cleary, McGraw, for instance, were to be the listing agent in this. And I hope we would. I hope we would, you know, there's realtors out here from Remax, there's realtors out here from Sample and Pool, they would make the same thing that I would make if I were making a sale. I make no overrides on any commissions in that office whatsoever from January 1st through December 31st, or for the rest of the time that I intend to sell real estate. So to recuse myself from an instance like this, I have talked to Ben about it. I've talked to JR, or sent JR an email on this. And, you know, I understand your concern. I appreciate that. But I also hope you understand that I don't make money on the sale of property other than what I do myself. Nothing from my office at all, period, zero. So because of that, I don't see the need to recuse myself in this or anything. When I was asked to be a member on this commission, I knew that I would take flack from being a realtor, and I knew that there would be people that thought I had favorites or whatever. Again, I don't know Mr. Walker except for briefly talking to him one time about a situation, a water situation on when he was developing Old Oaks 4 or 5 years ago. And I don't know if I've talked to him since then, to tell you the truth. So to, and I'm not saying impugn that you would think that I would do anything. I hope you don't. But to be honest, I don't make any money on the sale of any other products, or I mean any other properties through my office, except for what I do personally. So I don't see the need to recuse myself, because I might sell one of his properties and I might not. It would be like any other of the 250 realtors in town.
The company that you're affiliated with now, or do they have a pre-agreement with Walker?
Not that I'm aware of. I mean, we do business with him and we have his stuff listed out at Old Oaks, but as far as this particular development, when this came before the board, this is the first time I knew about it.
I still have concerns. I'm not accusing you of anything. I don't know you, but you can see where the concerns would be. And
did I not answer your question?
You're explaining it. It started to become obvious to me that there is some connection with the company that you're with now, with Cannon Cleary, that may have a relationship with the developer.
Well, I understand your position. I do, and I understand people's position of what's going on in up and down Augusta. But to be honest, I've been out there 2 times. I went out there yesterday on a ball game weekend at 2:30 and talked to 2 different homeowners. One, there's a gentleman from Austin, Texas, who was in for a couple of days, whose neighbor is from Columbus, he thinks. I spoke to another person at the development before you get there, trying to see how many cars were there. I went up to Augusta Place. I counted 74 places for cars, and there were 24 cars in the parking lot at 2 o'clock in the afternoon on Sunday ball game weekend. I came back down Augusta. There were 7 cars parked on Augusta Drive. It sounds like to me that Augusta Drive has a problem with Augusta Drive. And so I'm trying to figure out, I understand your concern if you live in Rosemont. I understand if you live on Augusta Drive. I understand that the carports are small. But I also understand it looks like to me that the problem is on Augusta Drive not being enforced the way it needs to be enforced.
All right. So I think at this point, we've done a little bit of backsliding, and we're relitigating the question of whether there should be a condominium development there. And we're not going to decide that question. Even if we voted against the site plan, it would not change the fact that there's going to be a condominium development at that site. So at this point, I'm going to ask, is there any other new issue to bring before the commission before I ask for a motion? Commissioners, any other questions or comments? All right. At this time, I will entertain a motion on the site plan for case number 2804.
Motion to approve, subject to staff conditions.
I have a motion to approve the site plan subject to staff conditions. Is there a second?
Second.
I have a second. All in favor? Any opposed? Please note one opposed. Site plan is approved. Our next case is a public hearing for case number 2800. David Blackburn has filed a request for, ladies and gentlemen. Just take a second.
Anybody left?
Okay. All right.
You got to stand up. Yeah.
David Blackburn has filed a request for preliminary and final plat approval for the Summit Phase 2, Lot 1, for property located at Ed Perry Boulevard. Ben.
This is a request for a preliminary and final plat for a one-lot subdivision. The property measures 34.7 acres. It's located east of Ed Perry Boulevard. Properties in the Oxford Commons planned unit development. Underlying zoning is suburban corridor and suburban center. This property was the subject of case 2788, which is a request for a special exception for a recreational use that was granted at the September Planning Commission meeting. Several adjacent residents have appealed the decision to the Board of Aldermen, which will be heard next Tuesday. Applicant is proposing this one-lot subdivision. It has 60 feet of frontage from Ed Perry Boulevard. The lot has one direct access to Ed Perry Boulevard, but it does have 3 other access points that are available via easements. Engineering did provide comments related to water, sewer, stormwater management, and therefore staff recommends approval of this subdivision with the following conditions. Approval of the preliminary and final plat by the Mayor and Board of Aldermen is required. Prior to the case being heard by the Aldermen, the applicant shall provide staff with a copy of the covenants for the subdivision. Prior to the case being heard by the Board of Aldermen, additional language is added to the plat noting the existence of existing easements regarding the use of temporary detention ponds on this site. And lastly, prior to the case being heard by the Alderman, additional language is added to note the stormwater management is required for any site plan to be approved on this site. Paul Castaneda is the engineer for the applicant. Could answer any questions should you have any.
Thank you, Ben. Any questions from the commission?
Yeah, and I don't know if this is for staff or for Paul, but I didn't understand what you were talking about of all the multiple detention ponds on various properties and whether they could or could not use them. Looked like they were required certain easements.
You've been looking at the transfer report.
Huh?
You've been looking at the
No, I haven't at all. It was written in there.
Yeah. Rhianna may want to comment on those comments because I believe those are related to engineering.
Okay.
Sure. I'll be glad to. We noted, as you remarked, there are a number of ponds that are existing, and we noted the requirements for easements to be shown on this plat. The easements are secured and in place. These ponds were put in place a couple of years ago when Tractor Supply was built and when the first phase of the summit was developed. At that point, they knew that long-term they're going to have a regional pond that will serve detention for all of these areas, but they didn't have the grading completed at that point to get the water to there. So what they've done is they've designed a series of incremental ponds kind of along the way, and we've required easements so that as they use these ponds, the businesses that are using them are guaranteed the right to use them until a new pond is provided. And we just wanted to be sure, as we continue to develop and plat these areas, that those permissions are noted and documented, because what we want to be sure we avoid is that we end up platting property that the purchaser does not know, oh, there's a pond there that they have to allow to remain until the regional pond is in place. Those easements have all been previously approved by legal counsel and by the owner's attorney. We just want them documented on the plat. And so all of that extensive write-up was basically just to say we want that language shown on the plat, and so that a person has an opportunity to come and research to learn about those ponds. And also a lot of times these case reports are written for our own benefit, because we document in the case reports what has happened so that we can go back and look. So that when there's a question or controversy a few years down the road, it kind of serves as the documentation.
And this is where the ball fields are going to be, right?
That's right.
We approved the use. This is just for the plat, but not for the site plan of the.
Yeah, this is for the transfer of ownership.
Transfer of ownership of the, okay. Just trying to make sure I understand where we are.
Yeah, that's right. We will be back.
Yeah, okay, that's what I thought.
Other questions? All right, I'll entertain a motion on the preliminary and final plat for case number 2800.
Motion to approve.
I have a motion to approve. Is there a second?
Second.
There is a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Just for clarification, that was subject to staff conditions.
Subject to staff conditions. Sorry.
All right. Thanks for that.
That's my default.
The next case is case number 2801. Jamie Martis has filed a request for a variance from section 2.6.3 estate residential build-to line minimum for property located at 710 Park Drive. Great.
Yes, sir. This is a single-family home in the Ridgewood Estate subdivision. It's just outside the neighborhood conservation overlay, and the estate residential zoning is the only standard for this, zoning standards for this lot, which have a 40-foot setback. The applicant is seeking a 6.95-foot front yard build-to line minimum variance to construct a staircase and porch extension. The house was built in 1980. It's a unique lot and house layout. The front door is accessed by a staircase up to the second floor. An old staircase was recently removed because of safety concerns and poor construction, and they're reconstructing the staircase and a landing, which is causing the need for the variance. The applicant and staff believes that the grade change from the street makes the build-to line not visually significant in the streetscape and would not negatively impact adjacent properties. Late this afternoon, I also received 2 letters of support from neighbors, and I can include those in the case file. A small variance for the front porch is the least intrusive option for accommodating the staircase for this unique floor plan and topography. Staff recommends approval with the one condition in your report.
Thank you, Gray. Any questions from the commission? All right. Any questions from the audience? I will entertain a motion on the variance for case number 2801.
Motion to approve as submitted, subject to staff conditions.
I have a motion to approve, subject to the staff condition. Is there a second?
Second.
I have a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, the variance is passed. Case number 2802, Sale Oil Company has filed a request for a special exception as provided in section 38.13, vehicle repair or maintenance facility, districts permitted for property located at Lot 2 of Colonnade Crossing. And case number 2803 is related. It is a request for special exception for business structure height for property located at the same location. I would ask that we hear the staff report for both cases and essentially discuss them as one, and we can vote on them independently. Ben?
Yeah, and just a point of record, the applicant's engineer, John Granberry, is joining us virtually, so he'll be available to answer any questions through Microsoft Teams. So we have two requests. I'll go through the merits of each of them one by one. I'll start with case 2802. That's the request of the use of vehicle repair or maintenance. And so this property's Lot 2 of Colonnade Crossing subdivision. It's the north side of Molly Bar. The lot will be located on Barrington Drive. It's about 1 acre, and the applicant is proposing an oil change and car repair facility, similar to like the dipsticks over on Jackson Avenue at Gateway Tire, where they have oil changes and some minor repair. The standards I've included in the report, and then also outlined how they comply with this. So where it's a special exception, it's limited in service for personal light duty, medium duty vehicles not requiring commercial driving license. This facility would not be equipped to handle larger trucks. The number of vehicles stored outdoors will not exceed 5 or 1 per bay. They acknowledge we're meeting that. No accessory junkyard or junk vehicles will be maintained like we see at some facilities. The use of screening is indicated on the west portion and portions of the south property lines, and additional screening may be required as a result of the site plan review. So once we get into the nitty and gritty on this, then we'll take a look at that if we need to add more. And the applicant acknowledges that no more than 2 vehicles per bay, a repair and inspection station. We no longer have inspection stations. Commissioner Riddell did want me to make that point, and if you remember in our last meeting, we modified the land development code to clean that up.
I would also say they're not called junkyards; they're called salvage yards.
Yeah, I think
as the daughter-in-law of a man who loves to go to a salvage yard.
Fair enough. One man's treasure. And no sale of vehicles are permitted on the premises, and they do not plan to comply with that. Staff recommends approval of this use specifically because they do plan to comply with those requirements. And then second request for this same property is because it's located in a property zone TNB, there is a requirement for a second story or a special exception to be sought for a 1-story building. In this particular instance, the request is for a single use. The applicant references the nature of rural cross-section and nearby single-story commercial establishments. They also state that this use is typically constructed as a single story. For this request, the single-story use in TMB district, staff does not agree with the arguments the applicant has put forth. The nature of the cross-section is a rapidly urbanizing area. Colonnade Crossing subdivision phase 1 was approved in June with 22 lots on 88 acres of TNB and suburban corridor zoning. South of Highway 30 is the Leslie Court development, where 2-story medical office is currently it has been constructed. Southeast of Highway Interchange, of the highway interchange is the Oxford Commons development, where numerous developments currently under construction. Directly south is a service station was approved in 2021. Service stations are not traditionally single-story uses, yet this was approved with a functional second story. There are instances where the Planning Commission has approved the use of a 1-story in a TMB district. have come when the use is plainly incompatible with a second story.
Can everyone online please mute your microphone?
Incompatible with second story, the surrounding architecture is such that a second story would disrupt the rhythm of the area. In this instance, this is essentially new development on a blank canvas. Both Vision 2037 and the Land Development Code envision TMB as a moderate height, as this one of the first developments in this zoning TMB district, a precedent for the development the city envisions should be set. Staff recommends denial of the requested special exception for a second story. I do think it's worth noting that the applicant did provide us with a revision of the architecture, and it did provide for a larger volume. So it kind of has the appearance or the height of a second story, but yet it's not functional space. And I think, you know, that's something for the commission to consider whether or not in this particular instance with this particular use, if it does or does not make sense to grant that special exception in that instance.
Thank you, Ben. Yeah. So we have two special exceptions that we're considering: the use at this location and then the form of the building that the use is in. I think they're very strongly connected based on the intent of the code and this particular use. I mean, the code in this district is looking for moderate height, moderate density uses. Having a second story on a service station probably doesn't make the most sense. So the question is, does this use make sense here? And if so, I think the height goes with it. So Ben, so help me out with the concept behind the second story requirements. So, I mean, one way to look at it is it imposes a condition that makes uses try to fit a round peg in a square hole. I guess the more charitable view for the code is that it's just incentivizing particular uses in particular places. So square pegs for the square holes, right? And so in this case, you know, the implication from the code is that maybe this isn't the best location for a service station. Is that?
Or if it's not, then there's a way to accomplish that, and that's by putting in a functional second story. You know,
Okay.
if the use is desired there, then, you know, like the gas station that is nearby, they found a way to create a functional second story, and it's compatible with the district. So,
Why does the code, I understand why it's in the code, but I don't understand why we care if there's a functional second story. I still don't understand that.
so going back to Vision 2037, where we heard from y'all, the community, residents, where we wanted to see types of developments, and we saw buildings of certain types that we wanted to see scale, especially around our neighborhoods where residential are nearby. We wanted to see things that were a little bit taller, but not so tall. So we didn't want to have the big 5-story building that was potentially able to be constructed, but you know, that 2-story building was ideal. We also heard for uses, the type of uses that are appropriate. They may be appropriate here, but you're also going into a neighborhood business style of you know, of zoning, and so if you're going to do that, you should be compatible with that type of development in that particular area. If you want to build a 1-story, you know, oil change shop, there are plenty of places that you could do that, and it's in a suburban context, and we have plenty of property that's available and zoned appropriately for that. So I guess the question is, you know, the city established its standard of the style of development it wants to see in that neighborhood business district. Do we acquiesce to a developer's want to locate a particular business there?
That's not really what I'm asking. Say it was something that did fit this. They weren't asking, we weren't considering use. They were good on use. We're still going to make them have the functional second story. I still don't understand why. I'm afraid that we are causing people to build space that will be empty, is my fear. That it's not rentable, it's not a good, people don't want it. We're causing people to have to spend more money than they wanted, and I just think it's gonna be, some of it's going to be empty space, which we get complaints all the time, oh, you're just creating, you know, we have too much empty space for rent. So that's sort of my concern, is not the use not a use question and then that, but even if you're in there, I still am not sure why, is the doctor's office already in? That's one, I don't know why a doctor's office has to have a functional second story.
Yeah, and they wanted the functional second story at the doctor's
But I
office.
don't know why we would make them if they didn't, is my point.
I hear you. And I think that's why it's a special exception. If you feel that has merits in the request to grant a special exception for the one story, you have the ability to do that.
Was the two-story requirement more for aesthetics or more for?
I think it was a combination of both functionality and for aesthetics. You know, density of either residential units, office gives opportunity. I think, you know, where we've seen it start to come to fruition, you know, I mean, we're really starting to see, I mean, I think COVID kind of put a little pause in some of those things, but, you know, Johnny Morgan's buildings up the street, the commercial space is starting to lease up. He's gone ahead with the second building, so you know that's one where we've seen the second story. We've got the gas station over on West Oxford Loop, and I don't know that he has a tenant for the second story at the moment.
I called him and asked him about it because he was not in favor of it at the time, and I don't think he's in favor of it now. However, he is using it and is put to use with the new shop that he's opening. I don't know the name of it.
Like a
local honey.
Yeah.
It's going to be some type of market. But anyway, that's where they're prepping the things to get to use it in local honey. So it is being used, and I think this sentence that you put in here about the precedent for the standard of the development for the city, what the city envisions should be set. Boy, you're really setting the precedent right there if you don't enforce that, it seems like to me.
I would echo that. That's how I feel about it. It's more about the precedent, because we have to hear about all the time from other builders, developers about, well, you allowed it down the street, you allowed this. To me, that's the most important aspect. What's the point of having Vision 2037 if we're not going to adhere to it?
Well, I would say this to that, is that, and some of you haven't been on here for that, they go through and sort of redo things in the code, and then we talk about them and we vote on them and so on. And a lot of times I would assume that's based on if we're voting on the same thing over and over and over, if it's coming to us over and over and over, which this seems to be, then maybe it wasn't done totally correctly in Vision 20. I mean, maybe we didn't get it right exactly the first time, which I'm not saying we didn't. I don't know. I would sort of like to go back and see how many of these have we done, how many, you know, because it does seem to be almost every month we have one. And so if you're forcing business owners to build something, that's HVAC units they're putting up there, that's lumber, that's, you've got to upkeep it, it's insurance, it's, you know, it's, okay, so Jeffrey's using it for something that he's using it for. He's, you know, that's, I don't know, I have not gotten a good reason for it, I don't feel like. Is my question. I haven't been still explained to why it's in there in the first place.
So,
is my concern.
Yeah, so two things on that. I mean, I think you're right. We do see things in the code that recur, and we have to grapple with staff about whether that's just growing pains in the city and that it's about learning to adopt the new code, or whether it's something in the code that needs to be changed, and that's just something we're going to continue to see. I think reading between the lines in the code and in Vision 2037, you know, there are two poles in the city that we're trying to move between, and it's the square, which is moderate density, multi-use, mixed residential, commercial, and there's the street that shall not be named, West Jackson, right? And like, we're trying to get away from West Jackson and more towards areas like the square. And whether this particular part of the ordinance is the way to get there or not, I think is what we're trying out. I agree that we need to enforce it to see if it works, and I totally agree that we need to keep revisiting it to see what effect it's having on the community.
And a code that was adopted in, November of 2017, so you're less than, really 4 years into it, and with 18 months of COVID, a pandemic that kind of stalled it out. I mean, we're still working through it, and we're still trying to understand it and see how the market responds to it. It's responded to it okay, and I think having having the discretion to be able to require a higher level of construction or architecture or things like that are also some of those trade-offs in being able to grant that special exception for a one-story. So I think it's even evidenced in this particular instance where they have come back and revised what they initially brought to the city for approval to try and provide something that they believe is better and for y'all to consider. It may not be there, but I think that helps you achieve a better standard of product in the market.
Any other questions?
Well, I guess it just doesn't, I don't know if it bears on this one or not, but I mean, I've represented Jeffrey in the marketplace in dealing with that, and I agree with Judy, is we keep having these special exceptions and we're setting precedents, in that instance, we allowed somebody to build a Dollar General or Family Dollar or something and not build a second story, but, made the only gas station in the only zoned area add, a second story. And, I think we need some consistency with what we're doing, right or wrong. And if it's wrong, then we need to change it. But, we need some consistency so that people can plan, and have some idea of what we're likely to do.
John, did you want to say anything about the project? Granbury?
Sorry, you looked at me.
Sorry.
John over my shoulder.
He's muted. There he is.
Oh, you're muted again, John.
John, can you unmute yourself?
Oh, well.
Take another caller.
Yeah, we'll take it. Anyone from the audience wish to speak on this case?
Yes. There he is.
Please come forward. Yep. We'll be right back to you, John, just a second.
My name is Bubba Mize, and me and my mother own the 3 structures that's left. And there's 2 residential houses there. And this is going to kill our rental property, as far as gas stations, oil changes, and car washes. And we're struggling now to rent them because everything's cleared around it, and people are worried about what's going to be next to it. Is it going to be a gas station like they heard? They don't want to live there. And this is part of my mother's retirement. This is how she lives. And this is a big concern to us. With all the traffic that comes, you have loud music and so on and so forth. And, we're just concerned about this, and we don't want this there. The car washes, the gas stations, and I don't know what the setbacks are on all that, but, I don't know if they're trying to get through that, from a residential house. There's 2 residential houses there. I have this from the city hall to show that these are residential houses. They're not commercial. So we're concerned about that.
Yes, sir. And we can get you the setbacks, but I don't think they're really going to satisfy the main issue that you have.
So, well, I don't know what else to say except, this is residential area and all this is going on around it, and we're not happy.
Yes, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right, John, you're muted again. but you're up. We're completely out of phase with John Granberry. There he is. Well, John, you're not muted now, but we can't hear you. Any questions from the commission while Ben tries? Okay, that's fine.
Hey, you're on speakerphone. The commission can hear you.
All right, sorry about that, guys. A little technical difficulty over here at the office. All right, so a couple things. One, we did, like Ben said, we did come back and the architect revised the elevations to give the appearance of a second story. The building is already height that is a second story height, just because of the lifts and everything that go along with the auto service facility. If it's aesthetics that the board and the planning department is looking for, that's what we were trying to provide. If it's a functional second story, it's hard to make a functional second story in a auto service building, just from the simple fact of the noise and everything that goes on downstairs. And the second story would have to be a storage area or office. It couldn't be residential. It's not very feasible, so it kind of runs up the cost of construction there. But I can tell you that if that is if we're forced to build a second story, I can go back and discuss with the owners if they'd be willing to do that. That's all I can say.
Thank you, John. Any questions for John from the commission? All right. Anyone else from the audience wish to speak? You're gonna say something?
No, I'm good. Thank you.
Okay. All right, well, we have two cases. We'll vote on them individually. I'll entertain a motion first on the special exception for the use, case number 2802. Motion to approve or deny the use?
Motion to approve.
I have a motion to approve. Is there a second?
Second.
There is a second. The motion is to approve the use, and there is a second. All in favor? All opposed? Did you get that, Ben?
5-2.
Right, the use is approved.
5-2.
That's right.
John.
All right, and case number 2803, which is the special exception for the single story. I'll entertain a motion for approval or denial.
Motion to deny.
I have a motion to deny.
Second.
And a second. All in favor? All opposed?
Nay.
5-2, denied.
5-2 to deny.
That's right. John, did you hear that? Okay.
Yeah, he heard it.
All
Thank
right.
you, John.
Thank you.
All right, case number 2805. Jay Luna has filed a request for site plan approval for Hooper Hill Phase 2 for property located at 2901 South Lamar.
Yes, this is the second phase to the cottages at Hooper Hill. The proposal will include 9 duplex, single and two-story duplex buildings. There'll be 9 of them for a total of 15 units, ranging from 1,400 square feet to 3,200 square feet. The existing ingress, egress within phase 1 will remain, and 2 new points of ingress, egress will be made in phase 2. As you remember, in August, the Planning Commission approved a special exception for a gated entry for this phase. Other review elements highlighted in the report, they meet those requirements from site plan review from Planning Commission. From engineering, the engineering report highlights, there's some updates regarding the second submittal that came in as in between when we were finishing up these comments. And I spoke with the assistant engineer today, and he had some highlights related, some updates related to the utility plan and the PVC pipes and meters and where those are located on site. The utility plan shows long runs of 1-inch PVC pipe to proposed buildings within the site and a meter set at the building. The city will not maintain these lines. What he's saying is that there's spurs of the different meters that are going to each of the duplex buildings, and I think engineering wants them all in a central location. They have a meter bank for the ones along South Lamar, but not for the entire development, and engineering would like for meters for all buildings placed on the right-of-way, and those service lines also running to those buildings. I know engineering staff can answer any additional questions related to that. And then the stormwater management plan is still under review. So the meters and the stormwater plan, you would take out the second condition that's in the report, and those would be added as a second and third condition per engineering. Staff recommends approval of the site plan with the approval of the site plan is submitted from planning, and the wording from engineering for the second condition would be that the meters for all buildings should be placed on the right-of-way and service lines running to those buildings all connected. And then the third would be that no permits would be pulled until the stormwater management has been approved.
Thank you, Gray.
So the applicant is here as well.
Just to make sure, since it's not in the report, all the commissioners got the 3 staff conditions at the end. Okay. Any questions?
Gray, when we met last time about the turnaround thing, was that, I remember somebody questioning whether or not it was big enough. Did that get looked at?
Yeah, Rihanna addressed that a little bit in the report. I may punt to her if she's able to answer that. I know that they were still reviewing. I remember those conversations.
We did.
Yes. We had conversations prior to that meeting with the engineer, with Paul and John Carl, another engineer in our office, and they have resolved and come to agreement about the turnaround, the size, and the layout itself. We had noted in our report that what was uploaded did not reflect our conversations, and that's been addressed in the upload received recently.
And within each of your reports, the updated plans are in the case file.
Any other questions?
Yeah, Brianna, Joseph here. Where is the fire hydrant? The 6-inch main, I mean, there was mention of it that it was going to be located within the site, but I just want to make sure that I'm clear. The 6-inch main is going to leave the street and go into that subdivision or into the site, but where is that fire hydrant? I mean, I'm assuming that you guys have checked to make sure that they can reach
Yes,
fires
sir.
throughout
The fire inspector has already approved it, but I don't remember where I'm gonna have to look.
It just wasn't clear to me. I just want to make sure that I'm clear on what.
The hydrant is, well, as you come in the new entrance for this phase, it's just past the little intersection there on the left.
Yeah, here's
the proposed fire hydrant.
It looks like a crosshair.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, it's right there.
Thank you.
Additional questions? Any from the audience? All right, I will entertain a motion on case number 2805 on site plan for Hooper Hill Phase 2.
Motion to approve with 3 staff conditions.
I have a motion to approve, subject to the 3 staff conditions.
Second.
And a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? All right. Site plan is passed 7-0. Our final case of the evening, case number 2806, Yellow Leaf Construction has filed a request for a variance from section 5.7.6.2 buffers for property located at 1016 Molly Bar Road. Correct?
Yes, sir. This is a small, a thin property located on the south side of Molly Bar Road, directly west of the multipurpose depot trail on approximately 1.5 acres. The property is currently vacant and is covered with mature trees, and the applicant is interested in constructing 7 3-story townhome style structures for a total of 11 units. The units are proposed along the entire eastern property line parallel to the multi-use path. They have not submitted to site plan review yet. They wanted to go forth with the buffer variance. The land development code states that buffers are a 50-foot evergreen buffer being maintained between any development and a walking or biking trail. Each of the units proposed are within this buffer, and the applicant is seeking to reduce the required buffer from 50 to 25 feet. The applicant states that the buffer hinders their ability to develop the property and meet the city's site design standards. The applicant references a buffer variance that was received south of this property to Oxford Elementary School in 2018. The proposed elementary school structure was built no closer to the depot trail than the former school structure was on that property, whereas this property has there's been no development on this site within this buffer at all. The school site had much fewer trees, and a large portion of that area adjoining the trail contained a recreation field. The applicant, I already mentioned the part about this, they haven't submitted to site plan review yet. Planning staff already sees many obstacles with this proposal, including the need for a request for a special exception for the 3-story buildings. There's a render that's been included in the report. The fire truck turnaround is inaccessible without this buffer variance, and there are questions about tree preservation and mitigation for the heavily forested site. At the end of the day today, Ben sent you 2 emails related to the Pathways Commission, the city's commission that is interested in alternative transportation. And the chairman, Don Patel, had a letter saying that he did not support the variance. And the commission generally also was not in favor. They weren't saying that they were against all proposals for buffer, but would be more favorable to one that supports the trail, whether that be some kind of facility for bikers or walkers to use, or a commercial space for them to access. Planning staff believes the site constraints and code issues triggered by the current site layout have been self-created and are economically driven, not the result of any unnecessary hardship. Based on the current proposal provided, staff recommends denial of the variance. And Joey Moore, the engineer, is here as well.
Thank you, Gray.
I'd like to add one more comment. Since the meeting began, the commission did receive an email from Dr. Greg Love, who's a nearby resident, and he says, I'd just like to enter this into the record just so you guys can hear it. Dear Planning Commission members, I live near the path on Eagle Spring and regularly use it for exercise, transport to work, and to take my daughter to CES. It is a gem for Oxford, and the city should not weaken its regulations for a poorly conceived condo development. Following the regulations regarding paths is crucially important because this is the only paved path in the city. In the past 18 months of the pandemic, I've seen how crucial the open green space is to the community as you and old alike walk, run, and ride the path from before dawn until after dusk. As the city planner rightly points out, this is asking the city to overturn its well-reasoned rules that were developed with extensive public input to help with a hardship that is entirely created by the developer. Furthermore, another vehicle entrance at that location is a poor and dangerous addition to Molly Bar, and the renderings are nonsensical since they lack garage doors. Thank you, Greg Love. For the record.
Thank you, man.
Joey Moore, Williams Engineering. Long night. Don't have a lot to say other than the fact that the property is 110 foot wide. The city's imposing a 50-foot buffer along the entire eastern side. Even though I'm here on behalf of the potential buyers of this property, the owner of the current property has sent us in here basically because he realizes that he's fixing to lose half of his property and that he's already lost it basically with this buffer in there. You know, regarding that email, I mean, the garages are on the back side, the garage doors are on the back side. That's the view that'll be from the trail. It seems like this guy's being penalized because he hasn't developed anything in there before now. You know, the school property got approved because it was already built on. As you walk down this trail, the Boys and Girls Club, the tennis courts, the hotel, there's no trees between the trail and the buffer. So the good thing about this piece of property is actually the trail property has about 35 foot of trees on the university property that owns the trail. So you've got 35 foot of trees on there, plus the 25 that we're trying to save, with a total of 60 foot of tree canopy left between the proposed houses and the trail. So, I mean, the real question is, you know, if you had this piece of property in your family for 30 years and all of a sudden half of it's gone, and the buyers know this, I mean, do you think that's right? I mean, that's really what it comes down to. Whether we're putting something there now, I read some of the emails that got sent in. It's kind of odd that, you know, one email says that they shouldn't be given access to the piece of property. Well, we can't do that. The other email says, we're okay with the buffer variance. They put like a coffee shop or something like that in there. Well, to me, that doesn't stand up. Either you want the buffer there or you don't. So that's what we're here asking for.
Thank you, Joey. I'll say that just from reading the application, my first reaction was, didn't feel like one buffer variance, it felt like 11.
Okay.
You know, because, you know, and I agree that it's a difficult lot, right? And I don't think the city would deny the ability to develop it at all. I think it's the character of this particular proposal. I mean, more than likely, I'm not going to say for certain, but it seems like a variance of some kind would probably be necessary to develop the property.
Sure, for the fire truck turnaround, absolutely.
Yeah, but it's going to need, from my perspective, not speaking for the commission, from my perspective, it's going to need to be something that preserves the public interest in the integrity of the green space and the pathway. And, you know, I differ a little bit on why it matters what is put there. I mean, the school, the tennis courts, the Boys and Girls Club, these are obviously in the public interest and part of the community. Not so much the hotel, I get you, but that's what we want to build around our public walkways, okay. Right? So, any questions from the commission? Yeah.
Joey, do you know if that piece of property on the butt end of it was approached about being purchased?
That piece of property is actually owned, it's completely cut off. So one of the Howarths, don't make me lie which one it is, owns the property on the other side. And he actually owns that piece to the south. And the guys buying it said that they would approach him or thought about approaching him because he's completely cut off to that piece of property. So not saying it's not a possibility or anything like that, that it's been brought up, but I don't know if they've actually talked to him or not. And it's just, this piece of property is unique because it's the only one down there that's 110 foot wide. I mean, that's tough. That's a tough pill to swallow. We've lost. Look, I'm all about the buffers. I think that's important, the canopy and everything like that. But I mean, we lose projects every year, not along the trail, but all over the town because of this 50-foot buffer. People they're upset about it. I mean, you're losing a third of your property, 25% of your property, 50% of your property, when 10 or 15 years ago, you had this land and it was what you're planning on retiring.
Well, the reason I ask that is if you take your same concept and push it down into that thing, you have a big green space up front, you're still gonna have to ask for a variance, but at the same time, you're pushing it down so you don't have as much variance there, if you follow what I'm saying. Because because of the way you pushed it down and it gets wider at the base of that property.
I'm with you.
I don't know if that's.
Right, and I don't have that right now, it's just, and we've gotta be, that'll be another variance because we've gotta put that first unit so close to the road. Being 60 foot off the road really hurts, because basically, if we're talking about a variance and we're gonna have to give one for the fire truck turnaround, I don't know. I know it's asking for a lot, it's asking for half, but it's really the best spot to do this situation in because the lot's narrow and there's already existing tree canopy on the trail property. So it's, and it's thick through there, especially on that side. I think where I've got, the road and the houses, I drove by there this morning, it's a lot of cuts. There's some trees in there, but that's not the fully grown area. It's not as thick as what it looks like on the aerial map. I was kind of surprised when I saw it, but that's all. It's really just the fact that this guy's, he's upset because he's got this property that's been in his family for a long period of time. Now all of a sudden it's like, the buyer's like, sorry, like, I'm not gonna give you near I'm not gonna give you near for what you pay taxes on. Yeah. And that's really the thing, is that he's paying taxes on that 50-foot strip, but he's not getting any benefit out of it. Can't touch it. MDOT does this, but they buy the property. And it's just it's a unique situation because it's a long, narrow lot.
Joey, what's on the other side of the trail?
On the north side or on the east side, the east side is the huge piece of property that one of the Hoards own.
Okay.
So that, he owns that, and then to the south of us, there's a little block that's cut off.
Yeah, that's a bit more to the east.
So I don't see them having to ask for that there. It's really because it's so narrow. And it's not, this is really, with the aerial map, there's a lot of canopy here. Like you said, as you go south, it's pretty thin. And so it's like, this guy is really the one that's gonna get penalized for that. The rest of them could make it, I feel like could make it work, but, and it's zone NR, which is 9 units per acre. We're not asking for that many, but obviously the city zoned it that way, thinking that you could put in multiple residential units in it. So that's what we're trying to do. And this number is what makes the math work for, we can call it financial, but that's what it comes down to. You gotta buy the property, you gotta price it to build, put the infrastructure in.
Any other questions?
Do what now? Which is, which could do what though? We've looked at several things. You're gonna have to put in a road that's wide enough to get a fire truck in there, 24 foot. Mm-hmm. City's gonna want some kind of sidewalk along that road for walkability. So I'm at 30 foot with curb and gutter. So I'm left with 60 after that buffer. So now I've got to get the house off the sidewalk, 3 foot. So now I'm talking about putting a 27-foot house in there. That's what would be left with. So if we don't want 3 stories, we've put the parking underneath to cut down. I don't even have any parking in this layout because everything's underneath besides the guest parking on the south side. So it does, we've worked the numbers. You can't get the square footage in there without something with the buffer. Now, if you want one home in there, that's fine. I just think it should have been zoned that way.
27, you're saying the houses will be 27 feet wide?
Deep.
Deep. That's not that tiny.
It's not if you want, Keystone houses out there,
Well, it's gonna be student housing no matter what. I think that's who would end up, so they have tiny little bedrooms and tiny, we're used to that. But, I feel for him. I do. I understand it. Did this already have fire truck, fire truck can go in here and turn around where you have the guest parking, or you haven't worked that out?
There's nothing in there. Yeah, once you get, so what would happen is that as soon as I basically put a driveway 60 foot onto us, I've got to put a fire truck turnaround, whether it's a 90-foot cul-de-sac or a hammerhead, kind of like what I've got designed. So either way, we'd come back and ask for a variance for that.
Does it fall off that much for that detention pond?
Yeah, it's going to be back there, and we might have to go underground. This is really early in the process. Obviously, the guy did not does not want to buy the property, does not want to spend the money on the engineering or the architectural fees until he figures out if this is going to work. It's a lot of money to invest in that aspect of it. Not that we make that much money, but other people do.
Just for me, I would say I totally understand wanting to develop it and owning it, and especially the ones towards the front, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. That's a lot. That's asking for a lot. Once you get towards the ones at the back, I could see, but to me, that's asking for a big get.
That's why I asked about that deeper piece of property, because if you could do that, then you could push them back a little bit. He might
Spread them out more?
Well, you could push them all the way to the end, put your hammerhead down at the end if you got that additional property. I mean, I know it becomes financially, now you got to weigh, do you want to buy that other piece of property? But if you want to get that many in there, that's the way you're going to have to do it, it looks like to me, because just like Judy said, up to about number 8, you're taking, a bunch of property there, but then if you shove it all back to the back, then you've only got, 1, 2, 3, 4 maybe that are asking for that much. I don't know.
I'm with you. And that's we're trying, we'll do some grading work in there and stuff like that. We said 25 feet, and we might take all that, we might not. But I want to make sure we have left us with enough room to make it work.
And I don't remember us ever doing this, but like you're saying, the city's gonna want a sidewalk in there. In something like this, to me, that might be a variance that I could see,
Sure.
If it gives us that much room off the walking trail, do these people really need a sidewalk right there? They're walking on a driveway on their own private road anyway. Right. So, maybe, I don't know, and Rihanna might say absolutely not, but, that might be a thought.
This is really more for long term. Everybody else may know the answer to this, but this this buffer, this trail that we're talking about, and maybe a question, for legal counsel, but how did it come about? The way you were describing it, it just, city decided one day we're going to do a trail, and that's, so council context.
It actually came from the alderman. They had been receiving complaints by residents of the development that was occurring in close proximity to the trail, and especially along Old Taylor Road south of Highway 6. And as a once canopy-lined, secluded trail is now penetrated by buildings that are in close proximity to the actual trail within 50 feet. And so the alderman, through the Vision 2037 process, actually directed us to add that element to the code. So that's how it came to us.
And who owns the trail? The city?
University.
The university does.
Okay. And this, I guess what I'm driving at is the authority to do that, right? I mean, it's just eminent domain. How do they do that? How they just say, hey, we're going to.
University?
Well, that's what I was asking. It's the city. Is it the city's buffer or the university's buffer?
No, this would be a buffer of 50 feet from your property line that when you're adjacent to the trail.
It's like a special setback.
That's right.
I'll look it up later. Thank you.
But I think time-wise, it was just in the last code, right?
Yeah. Bill, did you want to speak?
Bill Freeman, my wife and I live at 136 Oxford Creek, and I'm here on behalf of the Oxford Creek Homeowners Association in support of the staff's recommendation to deny the variance. We hate to see anything encroach on the nature of that trail down there. Everybody in our neighborhood uses it for recreation and for green space, and so we would hate to see you take actions that would allow it, whether it's 3 feet, 25 feet. It's a matter of dollars, as Joey says. What works for them may not work for the general public out there. And so we'd ask you to please be sensitive to that 50 feet. The Board of Aldermen requested that it be in there for a reason, and we'd like to see it maintained wherever possible. thank you all for your time and serving.
Thank you, Bill. Any other questions for Joey or? All right, I will entertain a motion on case number 2806 for the variance from section 5.7.6.2 buffers for property at 1016 Molly Bar Road.
I'll move to approve the variance.
I have a motion to approve. Is there a second? Not hearing a second. I'll entertain a motion to deny.
Motion to deny.
I have a motion to deny. Is there a second?
Second.
There is a second. All in favor of denying the variance? All opposed? All right, the variance is denied. Sorry, Joey. If there is no other business to bring before the commission.
I know y'all are all gonna be mad at me, but I wanna say this on a record because I have asked it before and I know other people have too while we're talking about this trail. I use it a lot and there's a lovely bridge, I don't know who built it, connecting Longest Road, that neighborhood. There at CB Webb, those children use it a lot that live in that neighborhood. I see them walking up through the woods, through the brambles and the brush and the, poison ivy with their towels, going to the city pool and whatever. And I and other people have asked the city, could an asphalt path not be put through there, something to make it safer and better so that both sides of the trail have access. So now it's on record that I asked.
Very good. Thank you. We'll see what we can do to help. Just one quick comment. The Planning Commissioner training, we're working to hold that training on January in Oxford. It'll be either the Wednesday, January 12th, or Thursday, January 20th. So I have the conference center reserved, and it would likely be a 9 to 3 type of a day. Lunch be provided, so I'll keep you posted with the details. I'll provide you with the dates and make sure that y'all have availability, but I just want to get that on your radar.
Thank you, Ben.
That's all I have.
Thank you, Ben.
Is there a motion to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn.
Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Pick some.